neutral nodding both yes and no, so I hope everyone's okay. Let's see. Couple articles for today. One, I believe, yes, now I know, today is the day that the first assignment is to be handed in. So, what I'd like you to do is make sure that by the end of the period, and you can do it on your way out, just so that people don't have to be moving around too much right now. Make sure that your assignment, which will include the first page, because then I can grade it and check off what you've done in a nice orderly way, and all of your work relevant to your questions stapled together or possibly paper clipped, because staples are an endangered species in the physics department. I do have paper clips though. Oh, those are binder clips. No, my paper clips. There are bigger ones there. I find them a little cumbersome. These are the smaller ones. I do have bigger ones though, if for some reason you need one. So by the end of the period, make sure that the first assignment with answers and work are right up here at the front. And I'll be grading those this week, and you should get them back hopefully early next week, at the very latest. Additionally, last week I went ahead and gave you the second week's assignment, and as we were going over that, it occurred to me that not everyone has a graphic calculator specifically, because I didn't mention that as a requirement for the course, and you don't necessarily need one as a requirement for Physics 1500 or 1510 either. So, what I'm electing to do is, for the week 2 assignment, as seen here, the 3 sections that begin with the word graphing are no longer required. So, this whole column is dead. So today we're just going to briefly glance at the remaining section we haven't talked about on this one, which is really just, use a specific button on calculator at least one time each. And I did say that this particular assignment would be due next Wednesday, and I'm going to stick to that. But since I'm omitting this half of it, I am also going to go ahead and assign the next assignment as well. And those will both be due next Wednesday, and they together make up a whole assignment in terms of the amount of math on them. This one's a little more numbery. Yes?
So since we're not doing the graphing now, so like some of them, if you don't know what to do, like if you don't know how to do whatever the problem was, is that like a bad thing? Like are we gonna need to do that with the new teacher?
For this class, no. For this class, no. And I'm comfortable saying that because the purpose of this class is to set you up for Physics 1500. And I've taught Physics 1500 for about 2 years now, and I've never needed the students to be able to do these on their calculator. Granted, there will be times where you'll have to say in a lab, graph some data on Excel, but that is not specifically your calculator's functions. So I'm making the executive decision. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I'm making the decision we're just not going to do those 3 columns in this particular semester of this class. And it won't come up on any, I'll make sure that it won't come up on any other assignments this particular term. I do apologize for that inconsistency. This course is exactly 1 semester old. It is still being fine-tuned. I'm operating off of the previous instructor's notes, trying to figure out what is important to the class, what needs to stay the same. So, again, I'm sorry for that little bit of strangeness there, but I'll go ahead and write all of these various announcements up on the board because I am a very visual person, and if I don't write things down, I forget them. So I'm gonna write things down so they can don't forget them. Let's see. Whoops. Okay. My handwriting is garbage, so just to emphasize, first assignment due today, second assignment is due next Wednesday, omit the three drafting sections, third assignment also due next Wednesday. Any questions any questions at all about when things will be due or anything along those lines? Okay, so again, make sure that your first assignment is stapled or paper clipped up here at the front by the end. I'm okay if on your way out you drop it off right there, just make sure it is there. Now, just so that you have it, I'm going to go ahead and pass out the third assignment, just so that everyone has it in their possession when we start talking about it. Single sheets of paper do this.
So first assignment?
The second? Oh, yes, sure. You say first and second?
No, this is it.
Just a second. Okay. So let's address these in order again. First, first things first, any questions at all about the first week's assignment? We've been going over it together for about 2 weeks now. And it is just review, but before it is handed in, does anyone have any last questions about any specific problems or concepts encountered there?
This is the first one, right?
Yes. Okay. Again, just make sure I have that by the end of the day. Now for the second assignment, we've addressed in the first section, so in the simplify the equation section, we took a look at those and The main goal there is just calculator proofing your statements so that it doesn't misinterpret things. The second section, i.e. insert, answer log, and that's ln, that's lowercase l and n, not uppercase I and an n. Is just about some common buttons on the calculator that we'll go over briefly today. And then the last page, which we talked briefly about last time, is the store function. We'll go back over that in a minute if we need to. And the three graphing sections on the right are now omitted. So briefly, the second section there. You were asked several questions about different functions on your calculator. So, first is the pi button, and most calculators, all of your calculators should have a dedicated pi function. Mine, most of them should have a dedicated button for it on the faceplate, and it's very convenient because it remembers pi past the third digit, which I never had to memorize any more than just a couple digits of pi, so I just don't remember it past 3.14. So I'm very glad my calculator does. Actually, my pi button is the secondary function of the caret hat raised to the power of button. Yours may be different, yours might be the same, but just to check to make sure that it works, if you just type in pi and hit equals, it will remind you what pi is equal to, and the calculator just conveniently stores this value so that I don't have to remember it, and neither do you. And you can just insert that kind of like a store function anywhere into any line of any problem. So, for number 4, you can simply press the pi button. That'll be inserted into your question, and then you can begin working from there. Now, would writing this exactly as I've written it on the board into your calculator work as far as the machine's brain is concerned? Does anyone see any issues with it?
When did point 98 by 4? I get to put parentheses around the pi.
It would be good form to, if you want to make absolutely certain that the numerator and the denominator are separated, but because within the order of operations, multiplication and division happen at the same time, as far as the calculator's brain is concerned, it wouldn't actually create a difference in the answer. Because technically speaking, if we were to interpret this in a number of different ways that the calculator might, it could see this as pi times 0.98 squared over 4, written like this. It could very well just do the divided by 4 by this exponent and then multiply that by pi, or it could interpret it as pi times 0.98 squared all over 4. And just in terms of the number we get, would there be a difference between these? And you can check in your calculator if you want to enter it multiple different ways, but there's no difference between these. Functionally, this is just the combination of pi and this fraction. So this particular question pretty straightforward in terms of making the machine do it correctly for you and not having to worry about it. So just make sure you know where your Pi button is. Similarly, make sure you know where your little E button is. So, you've been talking about this particular little number. On my calculator, if you want to use E, it is the secondary function of the ln button. And on my calculator, ln is in all caps, even though when we write it in the math, it's usually lowercase. And specifically, when you activate that function on my calculator, it defaults to being E raised to some power. So the actual button on my machine looks like this. And when I hit that button, what comes up on the screen is this. Because the machine is programmed to ask for E raised to the something power. Because usually when you're using this number, it's always in terms of an exponent, a natural logarithm, things like that. But E is technically a specific number, kind of like pi is. So to see what that number is, you could just raise E to the first power. Anything to the first power is just itself. So if we do that, you'll find E has a value, 271,828, so on and so forth. Yeah, I think the 1828 just repeats infinitely. So it is basically the same kind of thing as pi, except instead of relating to circles, it relates to natural logarithms. And make sure you can just access this button. When doing number 5, again, there's not a whole lot of things the calculator can do to mess this particular one up. Typing things in literally should still get us what we ultimately want. If you look at order of operations, exponent would come, parentheses comes first. There's just one number inside of this set of parentheses, so that's done. Exponent comes next. E is raised to this power, like on our sheet, so that will be done next. Then multiplication times 5, then plus 23. So no tricks here, just using the E button. Now, 6 and 7 are just about using the entry and insert buttons.
I have a question about that one, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
When it says to multiply E by 3s, does that include the cube there, the 2? Sorry.
Which entry is this?
This is number 6.
Number 6.
Because it says to use the insert button to multiply E to each of the 3s, but does that include the 2 raised to 3? Should we multiply that 3 by E?
No, because if you look down at number 7, 7 shows you what you should be then putting into your calculator. It did not do that. That 3 is ignored. So, just so that there's no trickery as to, it said put it by every 3, but then it showed that you didn't do it here. I guess I'll grade, if you write either way, I'll count it as correct. But because the assignment is visualizing it without that extra E there, that's what I'm just gonna operate on the assumption for. Yes.
That same problem, I keep struggling to put it in my calculator. I think maybe it's the, like, refraction, but, every time I put it in the calculator, I get a different answer.
I can get it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I got error too.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, sorry, I'm misinterpreting my own assignment. So, brief amendment, sorry. So for number 6, 6 is completely separate to 7, sorry. 6, you want to insert that function into your calculator, and then add e's onto all of the 3's. So for 6, actually, yes, you would want to put an e next to that 3 exponent. That is a separate thing from number 7. My apologies. So let's let's write up what that would look like. And then we will look at number 7 and figure out how to calculate and prove it. So 6, we start with 2 raised to the 3rd power minus 8 over 3 plus 5 minus 5 times 3 over 2. The very first thing we're asked to do is put this in our calculator. So let's take a second to calculator proof this, which will help us when calculator proofing number 7 as well. So just sort of going from left to right, we look at the numerator of this fraction, 2 raised to the 3rd power, then minus 8. We want that to happen by itself before the denominator, and make sure that things there are kept separate. Because if we just did this, do you see what specific bad thing might happen? So, additionally, this would look like this. And we want to make sure that it is not only dividing the 8 by the 3. So let's put a parentheses there, just for the numerator, and a parentheses there, just for the denominator. So we'll do each section and then the division. Now, let's look at the next term. Minus 5 times 3 over 2. Recommend putting fractions within their own set of parentheses. Although, purely technically speaking, if you just did this, 5 times 3 divided by 2, the machine would be fine with that. The machine would not mess that up. Because, again, the multiplication and division all happens at once. So this would be fine if you did it like this, but I've developed the habit over the years of putting every single fraction as represented in a parentheses anyway. So I will likely continue to write it that way. Now, so for the original statement, before we do anything else to it, this would be a good way to put it in the calculator. And we'll refer back to this for number 7 as well. So, continuing for number 6, you are asked to multiply each of the 3's by e. And I actually forgot until right this second. My calculator has 2 e buttons, and yours probably does too. The button I was first referring to is the e raised to some power button, which is the secondary function of the natural log button. But, yours hopefully is this one as well, there is also a button for e that is not raised to any power. That is, at least on mine, the secondary function of the division button. So that would just be lowercase e by itself. Make sure that it is the correct e. You can do second division, get e on your screen, press enter, and we still get our weird 2.71 number, so it is still the same variable. And I would recommend using that particular e for number 6, because then you don't have to put a 1 into the exponent to negate it every single time. So, let's look at this and figure out how the 3's need to be inserted in. Sorry, the e's need to be inserted. So, just doing so literally, just use the insert function to put them in directly. It would look something like this. Is anyone unfamiliar with the insert function completely? Has anyone never used the insert function? Okay, so let's review that. Let's go over that together. And I'm going to put this first part into our calculator so you have the same exact literal thing working. So, minus 5, minus 3 divided by 2. So, first thing we were asked to do, put this into our calculators, it's there. Now, like with a normal keyboard and mouse on a standard computer, in case you make a mistake, you need to be able to back up and fix it. Yes?
How did you say to put the e in by itself without it erasing up from exponent?
So, at least on mine, if you look at the division symbol.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, on a normal keyboard, on your normal computer, to back up and fix a mistake without having to use the mouse, you would probably use the arrow keys to physically just scroll back and forth. You can do the same thing here. And you can scroll in 3 dimensions with the 3 arrow keys to go anywhere within what you've already typed. So I am going to scroll around so that my cursor is just after the 3. It's sort of hovering like the black flashing cursor is right now flashing right over the minus sign right there. Because when you insert something, it inserts over top and to the left of wherever you're currently looking at. Now, if I was to, right here, just press another button, if I was to say hit the plus sign instead, it would just replace the minus with a plus. We don't want to start replacing things. If I was to just do second division to put an e there, it would end up being 2 raised to the 3 times e times 8. So we don't want to override, we just want to insert. So make sure it still says 3 minus 8. Make sure your cursor is hovering on the minus. And to insert, at least on mine, the ins function, ins, is the secondary function of the delete key. If yours is in a different location, then just make sure you can see the ins function. So I'm going to do second delete to go into insert mode. And when you do that, normally on mine, the cursor is a flashing black box. It'll flash between what's normally there and a black box. But now that I'm in insert mode, it's flashing between what is normally there and a blank underscore, which tells me that that spot in question is now we're in a different mode. Something different is going to happen when I hit something. So we have the flashing underscore. Okay. Now, once we're in this mode, any button we press will simply put something sort of to the left of that spot instead of just deleting that spot. So if we want an E there, I still need to, if I want to put in an E, I still have to go through the correct steps. So I need to hit second again. Now it'll be a flashing underscore with the up arrow for the second function. And to type in the E, I press the button for that. And it will have put the E just to the left of the space we're in. So insert function always puts things to the left of where you're currently at. That way it doesn't keep scrolling and you don't have to keep moving around. So to put the E on this 3, make sure you are hovering on the minus and insert between the minus and the 3. And so now I've got an E E right there, which should look something like this. We can then, we then need to move to the rest of it to put in more E's. And when you scroll away from where you're currently inserting, you exit the insert function. Notice if you do that, if you scroll to the right, the cursor should now just be the flashing black box instead of the flashing underscore. So we need to go back into insert mode, and then we insert whatever we want at that spot. So now we've got 3E plus 5. Scroll again, we're out of insert mode, come to the other 3, back in insert mode, and put that last E in. Yes?
What about the 7/8?
Okay. Very good question. I apologize for the tricky wording and visuals on this particular assignment. 6 and 7 are separate questions. They just look very similar and have similar principles. For 6, you want to take this and just add E's on all the 3's. 7 is then a separate question where you get rid of one of the E's, add in a pi and an 8.2. And yes, so 7 is an example of modifying something that we've already done, like something we've already entered. And that's why we're removing some things and adding some other things in for number 7. But for number 6, to do 6 completely, you need to add in just the E's, no pi signs yet. That'll come later. And before we press enter, we should look something like this. Any foreseeable issues with the calculator misinterpreting? Okay. I don't see any either that I know the calculator would mess up. I'm just hyper paranoid, and pretty much any time there's an exponent, I will usually seal that in its own parentheses, just to make absolutely certain nothing else happens there. But by order of operations, parentheses first, you look into this parentheses. If these were not there, you would look inside of this set of parentheses. Next thing that happened would be exponent. Within that exponent, we have a multiplication. So calculator should be able to just proceed from here, but if I was doing this in my own work, on my own time, just because I'm incredibly paranoid, I would seal every exponent within its own set of parentheses. And then you ultimately press enter, and you get your new answer, which will be different from whatever you get if you press enter here. So 6 is just the insert function. 7 is also reminding you that you can load back in something you've already done and then change it and press and do it again. So we're on to 7 now. We've done 6, we've pressed enter, we've got our answer. So on my particular machine, we have our function, we have our answer, we're now on a separate line. I can't go back up and edit what I've already done. But you can load in what you've already done and then change it again before you press enter again. So it refers to this specifically as the entry function. And entry just loads in the last thing that you did. So on my machine, entry is the secondary function of the enter button, the equals sign button. So if I hit second and then entry, it loads an exact copy of what we've already loaded. And most calculators will save, mine saves the last 10 things that I did. So if I press, if I touch nothing, except hit second and enter again, it'll load in the thing I did before this, and I can keep cycling through the last 10 things I did until eventually I just come back to eventually. Never remember this many things when I want to. There we go. So it'll cycle through the last sum number of things you did before coming back to the first thing you did because it ran out of space. So that entry function will call up the last thing that you did in case you need to change it, do it again, make a slight adjustment to it. Once you've reloaded it, then we are tasked with using the insert function to change it to look like what is seen in number 7. So to look briefly at that, in 7 we're starting from here and we're going to edit it to be what we are asked for the actual problem. That should look something like we have from 4, 2 raised to the 3e minus 8, and we have to insert a pi. So on the new version that you loaded using the entry function, make sure that your black cursor is hovering right on this parentheses, use the insert function, and that will put the pi right between these two things. Then divided by, open parentheses, 3e plus 5, and now we're inserting minus 8.2. And the only thing that's changing here is adding in the minus 8.2. And if you make sure your cursor is hovering over this parentheses between the 5 and the minus sign, you hit insert, you can then type in all at once minus 8.2, and it'll keep adding those in to the left, moving you down and putting that in the blank without having to move around or activate the insert function again. As long as you don't move, you can keep inserting in that spot. You can also delete what you just put in that spot, and you should stay in the insert function. Nope, you don't, never mind. As long as you press nothing other than entering new things, you will remain in the insert function at that one spot. Yes?
Okay, so for number 6, there was like, you were supposed to put an E beside one of the 3s.
Yes.
But for number 7, they took away an E.
Correct.
For 2/3. So how do you take away that E?
Okay, so at any point when you are creating a line before you press enter, you can scroll up to anything, and we've been inserting in spots. Let's scroll up to that E in question. So make sure that your cursor is hovered right on that E. If we use the insert function there, that'll put a new number in. That's not what we want. So again, make sure your cursor is on that E. If you, on that E, without using the insert function, press a new number, that will just turn the E into something else. That's also not what we want. So hovering over it, just hit the delete key. And for me, delete is the top middle button right next to the right button, the right arrow. And delete functions normally, as long as you are hovered over something in select hovering black cursor mode, then it'll just get rid of whatever you're on top of. So entry to load up what we've already done, scrolling and deleting an E, using insert to add a pi, and and then using insert to add minus 8.2. The second part of the function is still the same. The minus 5 times 3e divided by 2 is unchanged, and I'm running out of space. But nothing to edit in that last piece there. The only things that need to be changed are deleting an e, inserting a pi, and inserting minus 8.2. And as long as our formatting hasn't changed, we see any possible issues with a calculator might misinterpret something. I don't see any. So this should be okay. To anyone who has been getting inconsistent answers here, is there any problems with this in your calculator? Or are you getting any inconsistencies?
So with these problems, if we plug them in like exactly like that in the calculator, it'll give us the correct answer?
It should. I have been figuring out this machine very specifically how to stop it from making errors, and I've always learned to, again, sort of overprotect myself in terms of adding extra parentheses where I maybe don't need them. Looking at things as we presently have them, this and this, I don't see any order of operations errors that could happen. Just to look at them briefly together, parentheses first, so we'll look at this parentheses. Within this parentheses, I currently have another parentheses. We'll do this exponent to the third power. After that parentheses, then multiplication, 8 times pi, minus this from this, that's our numerator. Denominator set of parentheses, multiplication 3e, then addition and subtraction, that should be fine, followed by the division of the numerator and the denominator. Then over here, first is multiplication, division, well, it's really just multiplication, division here. 5 times 3, 3 times e, all that divided by 2. But because it's all multiply, divide, it all just happens simultaneously, and it should be fine. They're all just attached nicely there together, and it'll just be subtracted from whatever the other bigger fraction is. So this should give you a consistent correct answer, as with the version we arrived at for 6. Yes, sorry.
Do we need to worry about significant figures?
Not today, no, because most of these numbers are just integers, which have infinite precision. And we're also doing things like putting in pi and e, which also have infinite precision, because they go on forever and we know the first million digits of them. So for this assignment, I'm not worried about sig figs. My general rule, if I don't tell you that sig figs are important, is to cut your answer off at the hundredths place. That is my default. That is precise enough for my brain to have the information I need to answer. We will talk more about dedicated sig fig assignments later, and I will make sure that if sig figs are important to a question, it will say that in the question. So any question that sig figs are required, the question will tell you that sig figs are required. Last two functions that we have in this section are the answer function and the natural log function. Let's talk about answer really quickly. We used entry to load up the, we used entry to load what we just did a line ago in, so that we could edit it and hit enter again. But sometimes you don't want to just get the whole equation back. Sometimes you just want to take the answer you got and then do something to it. if you were doing this line by line, instead of having the calculator do it all in one fell swoop, you would say, all right, calculator, tell me what this is, and then take that number and subtract it from this. You would need to be able to manipulate the answer you just got. And there is a mode for that. If you are on a clean new line and there's an answer right above you from the previous thing that you just did, then we can use the answer function to use that answer that we just got in something else. And this is kind of the default thing the calculator does. If you are just hovering on a blank line and the next button you press is an operator, division, multiplication, minus addition, it will automatically, instead of putting that minus sign as the first thing there, it will automatically instead edit that to, I'm going to press times, because for number 8 we're asked to multiply our answer previously by 2 pi. I'm going to hit the times button, and instead of it just putting the asterisk, it's now answer times asterisk. Because if you are putting in that operator but there's nothing there, the calculator has been programmed to assume you want to perform that operator upon whatever you already had. So just pressing multiply will give us answer asterisk. And then we can multiply our previous answer by 2 and pi. And this will automatically load up anytime you press multiplication, division, addition, subtraction on a blank line. But there are some times where you might want the previous answer in a function that isn't just adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing to it. For example, let's say we found our answer and wanted to find the square root of it. So on a blank line, if we insert the square root function, it does not automatically fill that in because it's not one of the 4 buttons I just said. So if we want to make sure our answer ends up in there, we have to actually hit the answer button, which on my machine is the secondary function of the negative sign. If you just hit secondary negative, it will look like square root of answer. It'll just put answer right there. It's still programmed to use whatever answer you had previously in that spot, and it'll tell you what the square root of that thing is. And then, just briefly about number 9. For number 9, you're asked to find the natural log of 6.2. Natural log is ln, so perform the ln operator upon 6.2. That's the most straightforward one of that section. That is approaching the end of the period. So make sure that you have put these in your calculator and recorded your answers. If you have any questions or noted inconsistencies here, do please let me know if you're having any trouble. The last page is about the store function, which we talked briefly about, but we can go back to it next time if we need to. And make sure to be working on these, have your work and answers finalized, and go ahead, once you're in a satisfied place with that, and begin looking at the next assignment, where we're going to be, well, you know, I might not make this one due next Wednesday, but I wanted to go ahead and put it in your hands so that once you finish this, you have something to do. Prioritize, I always prioritize assignments in the order they are given. Make sure you're done with 2, or at least satisfied with where you are on 2 before working on 3. But I definitely see you guys being fully able to finish this up by Friday, but we'll answer questions about this on Friday, and we'll begin looking at 3 on Friday. And then I'll assess if any pushes for that. Because there's a lot of foiling and quadratics here that I don't want to just put on you in 1 week. But have this, look at this, finish up 2, send me your questions. I've been talking a lot, so you guys get out of here and have a wonderful day.